Hello, welcome to the Go Grab That Day podcast. Today we're going to talk about fights. And if it looks like I'm sitting on the floor, it's because I am. And my first training session back doing some Thai boxing, I managed to possibly break my baby toe. So I have it in ice, and that's why I'm sitting on the floor. So shut up, stop judging me. So we're going to get straight into it. Let's talk about we'll say, big card at the weekend of UFC 257. For anyone that watched the entire card that wasn't assholes that just tuned in for the McGregor fight, it was a shit card. So actually, you weren't assholes, you were probably right. The two co-main and the main event were pretty good. Other than that, it was quite a boring card, which I rarely say. I do rarely say. I had some friends over watching the fights with me, and it was quite hard to stay tuned in. It's another thing I've noticed. I actually do not like watching fights with people anymore. I don't know, am I getting old? What is it? Jesus, I enjoy fights much more watching them by myself. I think it's because I can kind of get into them a little bit more. I don't know, but yeah, no, this fight card was not the most exciting. But I'm going to run through some of the fights and build up to the co-main and the main event, and all that usual shit. I hope everybody is good. Hope you're all keeping well. So let's get straight into it. Like I said, I'm going to kind of skim through some of these because the fights were not the most exciting. So, early prelims, forget about it. Khalil Roundtree lost what was supposed to be his final fight, I believe, to Marcin Prachnio. That wasn't a bad fight. It was kind of exciting. Two powerful guys, so yeah. Compared to the rest of the card, it wasn't too bad. Juliana Pena had a good win against Sarah McMahon. I suppose the talking point about that is she called out Amanda Nunes afterwards. I kind of tend to kiss Amanda Nunes' ass a lot on this podcast, but I'm going to do it again. Pena is good. Amanda Nunes is great. But she did, all joking aside, Juliana Pena did look good. She showed a much more well-rounded game compared to what she has done. Look, there isn't a lot of challenges there for Nunes. I know she's got a fight coming up soon. For the life of me, I can't think of the lady's name, so I apologise, but she has a fight coming up. I believe it's in March or April, something like that. Megan Anderson, that's who she's fighting. But tough enough test for Megan Anderson. Is a big girl, but tall, rangy kind of girl is what I mean. But yeah, I suppose Juliana Pena has a right to call her out if you want that smoke. Moving on, I'm really skimming through this card. Like I said, there's not a whole lot of talking points. You have, I suppose, one of the big talking points is Amanda Ribas getting KO'd by Marina Rodriguez, which I think a lot of people have money on Amanda Ribas to win. There's a lot of hype coming from her last few fights. She's quite an exciting fighter, a nice character too. She's a very fun and bubbly character, and that's what kind of made her popular the last while. Yeah, she can knock the fuck out. The talking point about this fight is a lot of people are talking about Herb Dean again, because for those of you that have seen it, when Ribas got knocked down pretty hard too, he kind of Rodriguez kind of, was attempting her ground and pound, and Herb Dean sort of attempted to step in but backed out, and his leg, as you can see, kind of got close to the girl. So I think Rodriguez, jumped up celebrating, and Herb Dean said, no, I haven't stopped anything. But he didn't, to be fair, he didn't put his hands in or didn't grab her or anything like that. So yeah, I think it's, a lot of people are complaining. I don't think it's that bad. I do believe Amanda Ribas was done at that stage, but at the same time, it's not an easy job. Herb Dean's been doing it for a long time, and they do, every time they stop the fight early, there's complaints. If they stop it too late, there's complaints. It's a very small margin, to where they get it right. But he did stop it then, pretty soon after that. So he gave Amanda Ribas all the chances in the world. It's not the worst stoppage I've seen. It's maybe slightly late, but it's not the worst I've seen. You're damned if you do, damned if you don't as a ref, and Herb Dean is one of the best in the world. So yeah, the spotlight unfortunately shines a lot on him. You know, especially after the kind of the argument between himself and Dan Hardy a few months back or whenever that was. But yeah, there's kind of a spotlight on Herb Dean lately. But let's not forget he is one of the best refs in the world. But yeah, I think the Amanda Hebas loss shocked a lot of people. I know a lot of people probably lost a lot of money on it too, myself included. Not a lot of money, but I lost the chance of winning a lot of money. I won't complain about $10. Moving on. Yeah, so Joanne Calderwood had a good win against Jessica Evil Eye. Again, not the most exciting fight. Unfortunately, it goes right down, like this card goes right down to the co-main before things get exciting. Obviously because of the names and stuff like that. But yeah, so it seems like I'm skipping right through it, but unfortunately I don't really have much choice. Yeah, so moving on to the co-main, which is Dan the Hangman Hooker versus Michael Chandler, which of course ended via KO or TKO in the favour of Michael Chandler. This is a great win. I was rooting for Dan Hooker obviously, but I like Michael Chandler too. He what a way to make a statement in your first fight in the UFC. You know, I think the odds were stacked against him. You know, betting odds and people in general. Dan Hooker I thought was a nightmare matchup for him because Dan Hooker is so long. He's got such good wrestling defense. But I think Michael Chandler just never really gave Hooker a chance to get settled in the fight. He just pressured him right from the beginning. Just constantly chasing him and cutting him off, and real heavy pressure. And obviously when you're, it's a bit like when guys face Khabib and any of these other good wrestlers, they're so fearful of the wrestling. Not even fearful, but they're just thinking about it so much that you forget about the hands a little bit. And I'm not saying that's what happened here. Like, Michael Chandler has good hands. He's not a Khabib. He can strike better than Khabib. But it could be a case here, I don't know. But he threw a lovely combination right to the body and left hook to drop Dan Hooker. And it was so fast, so explosive. Yeah, it was just, Dan Hooker got caught. But what a great win for Michael Chandler. The unfortunate thing for Dan Hooker, for people that don't know, and this is not making an excuse for him, but I'm sure it doesn't make things easy, is that none of his head coaches travelled. And it's because they can't. The thing with, obviously I can speak being here in New Zealand myself, it is great obviously that we're kind of back to normal here and there's no major COVID issues, but there is a lot of issues with COVID, leaving and coming back to this country. So for like Dan Hooker, Adesanya, or any of those guys, say like when Israel Adesanya and Brad Riddell travelled for Carlos Ulberg's fight on Dana White's Contender Series a few months back. I can't remember when that was, sorry, but yeah, basically those guys all had to stay there for an extra, I think it was nearly 2 months, because in order to get back into New Zealand, you have to kind of book a spot. You kind of have to book to come and do your isolation and stuff like that. And it's the same with Dan Hooker. And obviously the more guys that travel with you, the harder it is for you to get a slot to come back in. So, none of his head coaches, like from Mike Angove to Eugene Behrman, the wrestling coach, and Andrew Paulette, I don't think he travelled either. He did, however, have George Hickman in his corner, which is, he's not one of the city kickboxing coaches, but he's kind of had a connection. George Hickman, who runs Tiger Muay Thai with his brother Frank. But yeah, so I'm sure that's tough on Dan Hooker as well. It doesn't help, but at the same time, there's a catch with everything, like, as I heard Eugene Behrman say in an interview, it's great to see all the Americans been able to bring their coaches with them, but then you look at America's COVID numbers, so there's a catch. There's a catch with everything, but that's annoying for Dan Hooker, I'm sure. But you can be sure that his team had him well prepared for that fight without having to go out with him. But yeah, good fight. At the end of the fight, it looked like, I always notice live, when you see a fighter taking off the tape around his gloves, it's usually a sign that they're going to retire. Because usually that's what a fighter does. They'll take off their gloves, they'll drop them, and they'll give their goodbye speech or their interview and leave. Dan Hooker did that, but he didn't give an interview. He just left the octagon. He left his gloves behind him. But I haven't heard anything in terms of whether he retired or not. I still haven't heard anything. I couldn't find anything. But I don't think he did, because I'm sure somewhere would have heard of it. I'd imagine he was just pretty emotional. Immediately after the fight, I'm sure he's pissed off. And even Eugene Behrman had said that in interviews that, to quote Eugene Behrman, he said something like that Dan Hooker has no injuries after the fight, and he would be pissed off because of that. He would almost prefer to be injured and prefer to be hurt. So that tells you the kind of character he is. But by no means is Dan Hooker done. He can still take another route towards the title or to some big name fights. Absolutely, That's just the way that division is. The division is so stacked. Like, there's no easy fights for anybody. I mean, you look at Khabib, he was the only outlier. He was the only one who, really was the cream of the crop at the top of that division. Obviously, we're hearing rumours, but I imagine he's done. I don't want to, actually, in fact, I'm going to put it down to him being done. You're either back or you're not. I hate to hear that shit, but it's just such a cool division with so many guys who can beat each other, and they can fight each other 10 times and split the amount of times they win. And then you add Michael Chandler into the mix, who clearly made a statement and gave a great post-fight interview afterwards. Putting everyone on notice, calling everyone out, which is what I love to see. I don't like when you see these. It's good to see guys that are humble, but make your pick, call somebody out. It's better for you. I remember the great Chael Sonnen saying that if he gave out about these fighters that come out and say, "Oh no, I don't mind who I fight," or "I don't care," and he said the problem is if the fighter doesn't care, the fans don't care either. So you got to make your call out. You got to call out somebody, and Michael Chandler pretty much called out all the boys above him, including Khabib. Which is great to see. A dangerous guy for that division, and another one added on top of all of them. So, and from what I hear, like, Dan Hooker was the only one who took that fight. A lot of guys were kind of turning it down. They didn't really have any interest in it. And he was, as soon as he was asked, he was glad to welcome him in his words, "I'll welcome him to the UFC." Which is pretty cool. But a great win for Michael Chandler, and hopefully see Dan Hooker back pretty soon again. You could see a scrap with him and McGregor maybe, but so moving on. But look, at great fight, great win for Chandler, and Hooker will just have to dust off and come back again. He has all the ability and all the talent to do it. Moving on to the big main event. So I got a very different version of Conor McGregor this time round, in terms of being a little more humble and respectful and more human, I guess, which is good to see. And it seems like a more real side of him. And I do like to see, as much as I like McGregor in general. I like his shit talking too, but it's good to see that he's not willing to force it or fake it, And I did like the respect between him and Poirier. Of course, the fight didn't go McGregor's way, and I did say on the Go Grab That Day Instagram last week that too many people were doubting Dustin Poirier. I mean, it's comments I was seeing, people saying he doesn't belong in the cage with McGregor. People who thought that, please just stop watching the sport. It's not for you. It's not at all for you. Go watch something else. I have to be insane to believe that. Whether you did believe it or not, I don't know, but to think that Dustin Poirier belongs in there with any of them in that division. He's the cream of the crop, and he showed in that fight. The ATT, American Top Team, who are Dustin's team, Mike Brown being the head coach, Thiago Alves as well, an ex-UFC fighter, I believe, is now fighting bare knuckle, but another one of the coaches and a veteran of the UFC and sport in general. But they had a great game plan. Look, McGregor's looked in the past where he might be, I don't want to say weak, but it might be a weak point in his game, where leg kicks. But his movement, it used to be quite hard to catch him with leg kicks, and his movement was a little less in this fight. He was more focused on boxing. But they did say, for me, there's a lot of people coming out now shitting on McGregor, saying he's done. He's made his money. He's just not able for it anymore. Like, what fight were you watching? Like, for those of you who think McGregor was terrible in that fight, what fight were you watching? Because he was brilliant in the first round. Like, if you rewatch it, he was brilliant. Not saying the Poirier was bad. The two of them were like McGregor's movement. He was getting out of the way of most of Poirier's punches, but just that much, and he was landing harder. The problem was he didn't fully check the kicks. That's where the game changed. But like, how do you think he's finished? Tell me why he's finished. You know, because he lost to one of the best in the lightweight division. You're insane. Albeit he should have probably checked those leg kicks better, but he did say afterwards, I didn't notice it as much in the fight. But like sometimes to check a leg kick, you gotta raise up and turn your shin out. But other times you see guys, they just turn their shin without lifting their leg. And both McGregor and Poirier in their interviews afterwards said that he was checking. He was just turning his shin out, but the problem was Poirier was still catching the muscle. He was getting checked, but he was still catching the muscle on the front of the shin and the side, which does happen. And someone who does a great breakdown on his YouTube channel is Brad Riddell, who also fights out of City Kickboxing. But he talks about leg kicks and about, you know, guys when they're checking leg kicks and stuff like that. And there is that point where you can still, even on a checked leg kick, you can still catch them if you just step out. Like someone raises their shin, you just step out a little further, you can still kick around the shin and things like that. But yeah, the point I'm making is, although McGregor checked some of them, he didn't check enough in my opinion. But although he checked some of them, Poirier was still landing. But yeah, and it just took its toll. You could see as soon as the leg kicks started to take effect, McGregor's movement was completely nullified. He just didn't have the same head movement or anything like that, which it's hard to have when your legs are compromised, obviously. But yeah, he did listen. I don't look at it as a terrible performance by McGregor. You know, obviously I'm slightly biased being a fan, but I've said before I'm a huge fan of Dustin Poirier as well. I thought McGregor looked very good in that first round. Thought his movement, the first round and early in that fight, but I thought his movement looked really good. He was landing definitely more power on Poirier. So yeah, he'll regroup and come back. Just too many people shitting on all his talk, he's a disgrace. Why are you watching the sport? Like, why bother? That's all. You're just sitting around waiting to shit on someone when they lose, and then you disappear for every other fight until they fight again. You know, these casual people drive me crazy. But yeah, you know, like, if you're gonna comment on it, have some backing behind it. You know, if you're gonna talk, like, there's plenty of guys I know who shit on McGregor, but they watch the sport all the time, and they make legit points. But don't come out there saying, "Oh, you shit," you know, it's terrible, look terrible. He can't fight, you know. But yeah, good performance by Poirier, and clearly Mike Brown, his head coach, and then they really worked on the game plan to literally nullify McGregor's movement. And you see McGregor's leg after the fight, like, yikes, it's he'll be sore for a few weeks. But yeah, it's well, and I like to see Poirier get the recognition he deserves. You know, from, you know, a lot of people out there don't watch the sport that often and don't really know much about him. Hopefully they're paying attention to him now. He has earned it, and in the build up to this fight, like, Poirier has a charity, which the name now is eluding me a little bit. It's the Good Fight. It's called the Good Fight Foundation. So as far as I know, what it is, it just helps out like kids who are in, you know, maybe less fortunate situations, whose families don't have a lot of money and things like that. I think that he just helps out with things like that so they can get educated. But anyway, long story short, McGregor's team donated $500,000 to his charity. You know, which is a good thing. You like to hear that. And Poirier is one of these guys that does a lot of good things outside of fighting. So yeah, he deserves that. Be interesting to see what happens next in terms of, you know, Khabib and all that kind of thing. But it sounds to me like Khabib he's done. He's staying done. You know, I just hope the UFC make a decision. There's the big, huge announcement that showed all the videos of Dana and Khabib going in talking like it was something out of the, fucking Godfather. And Dana White comes out and says, "Oh, Khabib said that the guys need to impress him at the weekend." So you're retired. Fuck off. I like Khabib is a great fighter. Don't get me wrong, but I just don't like when people hold up the division. The same when McGregor used to do that. When he was announcing his retirement and still tweeting about fights. You're done. Stay the fuck out of it. But yeah, in my opinion, Khabib is done anyway, unless they're working on a GSP fight, which I don't think is happening. Because in that division, the only person really that would probably tempt him is Michael Chandler, and I don't even think that's tempting enough. So he's best to just, stay away, retire, stay retired, and best of luck to him. And maybe what they'll do next is maybe Poirier versus Chandler for the title. I don't know, or else they might do something like maybe Poirier versus Charles Oliveira for the title, something like that. I don't know. I don't know if Chandler has earned his right at the title, but you never know with fighting in the UFC and big names and things like that. But he'll kind of skip over a few people if he does that, I think. But yeah, it's such an interesting division, such a stacked division, so many more good fights coming up in that division. But yeah, look, it wasn't the best card in the world, but two main fights they did deliver, to be fair. I'd like to see McGregor's team regroup and hopefully he fights a bit more often. At the end of the day, he is human. People have to remember that, but he's still got some super interesting fights there. I honestly think that I go by the Nate Diaz fight, the way they changed their game plan for the second fight and the way they beat him. I think that they could do the same to Dustin Poirier. They could beat him. They come up with a good game plan, but it'd be interesting to see the battle between, the battle behind the scenes between Mike Brown and John Kavanagh in terms of game plan and how they switch it up for the next fight. If they fight again, I'm not sure. We'll see what happens. But yeah, two great coaches in the game, kind of sometimes underrated, I think. In particular, John Kavanagh. But yeah, it is an interesting fight. Of course, McGregor has the Nate Diaz 3 fight if he wants to do that, and he has a list of guys inside the lightweight division. I just hope he stays now with MMA, stay away from the boxing and stuff like that. It's much more, honestly, the sport is that little bit more exciting when McGregor is around, whether you like him or not. But hopefully a few of you keyboard warriors might stick around and watch a few of the next fights over the next few months, because there is some great fights coming up. But yeah, again, kind of quick in the breakdown of that, but nevertheless, it's interesting. But yeah, I don't know what kind of pick I would make in terms of who matches with who next, because that division is just there's so many great fights you can make, and from 1 to 15, there's so many fights you can make, and yeah, I'm not going to try and pick. That's because I would like to see all of them. I'd like to see Poirier versus Chandler, Poirier versus McGregor again, McGregor versus Chandler, Chandler versus Ferguson, Ferguson versus McGregor, Ferguson versus Poirier, Oliveira versus any of them, or put them all in the cage and let them all just fucking beat the shit out of each other. But yeah, it's a great division, very exciting, and looking forward to what the future holds in that division. But hopefully, as I said, Dan Hooker is not done and there is no retirement yet. There's plenty left in him to go. And a super entertaining fighter. Same McGregor, hopefully he doesn't disappear and only the UFC line him up with some nice fights over the next while. And I'd like to see definitely out of all of them, whatever happens with the belt, I'm sure they're going to announce a big fight for the title soon, because it doesn't sound like he was coming back, as I said. So I would like to see it Poirier versus, I don't care who the opponent is, but Poirier versus someone else. He's earned it more than any of them. Maybe, I don't know, they could let him do McGregor versus Poirier for the belt, which I don't totally agree with. Maybe a Poirier versus Charles Oliveira you could do. But I have heard Oliveira seems to be turning down a lot of fights too, so it's hard to say really. But again, like I said a million times, that division is just, it's really good. We've got some exciting things coming up. So that's the breakdown of that card. Obviously there was news, and I'm not gonna talk about much today, but I'm hoping to talk to a friend of mine who's a somewhat of a boxing expert compared to me. The Jake Paul versus Ben Askren fight. That's amazing. After all of Jake Paul's talk, fighting all these guys, he picks Ben Askren. But anyway, yeah, I don't know. It'd be interesting to see how that goes. Yeah, I don't know. Ben Askren has zero striking really, so. But I'm not going to fully get into that now. I'm just letting people know that it has been announced for those that haven't heard. The date for that fight is, I think it's April 17th, and it's a legit pro boxing fight. So we'll see how that goes. Yeah, we'll hopefully talk about that next week with a boxing friend of mine. But yeah, it'll be interesting to bring a lot of eyes on it, I'm sure. Don't know how well Jake or Ben Askren's going to do, because out of all the guys that Jake Paul wanted to fight, Askren has probably got the worst striking, in my opinion, but we'll see. Anyway, so that is, I'll have a quick look at what's happening next week. Yes, we got Alistair Overeem versus Alexander Volkov, which will be a good fight, but for some reason here, I'm not getting the undercard. God, I have to say, the UFC, for such a good company, such a big company, their website is absolutely shit. There's always issues with this website. Yeah, I don't know what the undercard of this event is, because it's not showing me. It's just showing me the main event. But anyway, yeah, next week, this 7th of February, we have Alistair Overeem versus Alexander Volkov, which is an interesting fight. Two big dudes, obviously. Overeem, who's now, I think he's 94 years of age, still fighting. But that'll be a good fight, but I like Volkov too. A lot of good movement for a big heavyweight. But anyway, that's it for this week, folks. Cheers for tuning in. Sorry that was a pretty quick podcast, but it's not my fault. That's the UFC's fault for shit fights. But yeah, hopefully everyone enjoyed the card. Yeah, we'll have plenty more stuff coming. Hopefully you enjoyed the first episode of the Random as Fuck podcast I did last week. There'll be more of them coming as well. Just like I said, something different for people. I'll do another one this week now in the next couple of days. And then we'll have, again, our routine of fights coming up. So it's great to have fights back. Please keep liking and sharing the page, subscribing. Plenty of you are following the Instagram page. I'd just love to translate you over to the YouTube if I can. That'd be great. So give it a like, and most importantly, give it a subscribe and keep tuning in. And yeah, see you all next week. Cheers.